For this challenge, you'll definitely need to have 23.2 installed of Tableau Prep so that you can have access to the lookup function and the moving average as well. So let's take an explore of that. So what we have is quite a simple data set. It's just got daily data from different stores for different bike types and their sales and their profit information. So we want to get this data aggregated to a monthly level. So we'll first of all use a date trunk for the month of the date, and then I've just wrapped that in a date function as well, so that it doesn't return a date time, since date trunk automatically will return a date time, but we don't really have any time information of these sales. So we do that so that we aggregate it all up to months now. And then we're just going to filter this so that what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that it is filtering to the to only include completed months. So that'll be for June, all sales before or up to and including June 2023. So to make that a bit more dynamic, I use that as like minusing 1 month from today. So today it's July, so that will make it June. So everything before June is going to be included, and we can see that that is working here. So our maximum month in the dataset is June 2023. Okay, so now we can aggregate that all up. So grouping by the dates, the stores and the bike types, and summing the sales and the profit. What we can see at this point, if I just add in, say, a clean step in the middle here to show you the problem that we're going to address. So if I look at Brixton and Road, then if I scroll back to the top of the dates here, we see we've got a missing value here for February 2020. So Brixton clearly wasn't able to sell any road bikes in that month, but we're missing a row of data to tell us that. So that's really important when we start thinking about moving averages, because we want to make sure that we have a row for each month in the dataset, so it's calculating that average across the 3 consecutive months rather than just completely ignoring that February exists as a month. So the way we're going to fix that is we're going to scaffold the data. So we need to know the next month. So for example, with our Brixton Road example, we want to know that our next sale happens from January in March, so that we can add that February row into our data. So the way that we're going to do that is with the lookup function. So the syntax for the lookup function is very similar to how you'd use, say, for example, the rank function in Tableau Prep. So you might be used to using a visual editor to build that calculation, but this is the calculation that's going on in the background. So yes, it does look a little bit hideous the first time you see it, but if I look for the lookup function, then I can see some of the syntax suggested there. If I look for the rank, I think that will also include the partition example of how you write that calculation. So it's similar to, I would say it's similar to how you write it in Tableau Desktop. It's not super similar, so let's not think about desktop to confuse ourselves. So what we're doing here is basically we're grouping by our bike type and our store. We're then ordering by our date in ascending order, and we're looking up the date from the next row, so that's like +1. So 1 row below, we want to know the next date. So when we're looking at that Brixton Road example, then our sale is going to happen for that January 2020. Our next sale is going to happen on the March 2020. So it's not going to return us February, it'll return us March. So that's what's going to happen there. So let's take a look at that. So we've got Brixton Road, and in January 2020, we can see that the next month that we're getting there is March. So this would have been a lot more difficult to get this value in previous versions of Tableau Prep. Still possible to get that value, but a lot more fiddling around. So it's so nice to have just that lookup functionality now built into Tableau Prep. So thank you very much to the prep devs there for giving us what we want. Now this is now going to feed into the new rows step, but we've got to consider something first of all. So in the new rows step, it will look at our date field and it'll have a less than or equal to our next month field. So what that means is that because there's that equal to, so less than or equal to, it would generate a row for February, but it would also generate one for March. Now we already know that March exists in our data, so we don't want that to happen. So our next step here is to -1 month from that next month. which seems a bit strange. But now if we look at our road bikes in Brixton again, it's turned it into a date time, so we'll just need to change that back to a date. But now we can see for that January value that now we've just got February is the next month that we might need to generate. For example, though, if we go to like March, then you'll see that we just have March being the next month in our data, because it's not going to tell us April because we already have sales for April there. So this, in this case, when it goes into the new rows step, it's not going to add on any more months. Okay, and then we've got to think about those values for which we have a null. So for our next month, where we have null values, and you can see pretty consistently here that that's all towards the end of the data set. So that's where we didn't have a next month to go and grab with our lookup function. So what we're going to do is we're just going to work out the latest month in our dataset. Again, keeping it dynamic, I just used an LOD here to calculate the max date in our dataset. So that's obviously June 2023 because of how we filtered it earlier. And then we just want to say in our next month field, if our value for next month is null, then replace it with the latest date. And now we have no null values in our next month field. So now we're finally ready to scaffold it using that next row step. So we're doing our date less than or equal to next month. We're renaming that field to be month, and we're making sure to change that, specify our increment value as month, and we're going to copy the values from the previous row. So if I find again my trusty Brixton road example here, and then I go to January, then you can see that it has added on that new row for February 2020, and that's nice that it's copied it down for the store and the bike type, but we're going to need to do something about the sales and the profit to make sure there's 0 instead for our new row that's being generated. So we'll come to that now in this next step. So for our sales field, we're just going to check if our month is equal to our sale date, then keep the sales value, otherwise make it a 0. So going back to our Brixton Road example, and that January, so our top row here, we want to leave as the sales value because that is a genuine row in the data, but we can tell when a row has been generated when the date isn't equal to the month. So that's our second row there, and we want to make sure that we 0 our sales and 0 our profit. So they're exactly the same calculations for sales and profit, just obviously replacing the clause with profit or sales, and then we can just get rid of that date field. So now when we click on Brixton and road bikes, then we can see that blue going all the way through our values in our month field. So we know that we've got a row for every single month of data in our Brixton road bikes, and that will be happening across each bike and store combination. So great. Now we're ready to calculate our moving average. So let's show you how we do that. So we're calculating it on the profit. So we go to the 3 dots menu there, create a calculated field, and select the moving average, or moving calculation, sorry, as it's called. Now, it's always scary when you get like errors straight away before you've done anything, but it's because we need to choose how to order our data. That is a requirement for this to happen, for this calculation to work. So we're going to order by our months. And at the moment this is going across the whole table, so we want to actually make sure that it's grouping by each store and each bike type, so that it's taking those things into consideration. We definitely want to change this from a sum to an average, so that it's doing a moving average rather than a moving sum. And then we want to increase this to be looking at the previous 2 values and the current value. So it's taking the average of these 3 values. So it looks quite nice how it's visually showing us that. And we can see how that is working. We get nulls where we don't have enough values. I know in Tableau Desktop we can control how that works, but this is the only way that we have for now with those null values showing up there. And then we can just rename it as we normally would. So I called it 3-month moving average profit. Quite a wordy title, but very descriptive as to what that actually is doing. And that field is existing in my data here. So now we're ready to come on to that final part, the output. And we're introducing you to another sneaky new feature in Tableau Prep, and that is our naming of our output file. So in this kind of parameter example before, we only could have access to parameters that we created ourselves, but now we also have these system parameters. So one's for the run date or run time, so that we can dynamically name this. So we just added in our date, our month, sorry, of our month name and our year number. So you can add more than one. So it's got the month name and the year number analysis, and that's previewing to be July 2023 analysis, which is super cool. And I really like that so that you can always keep track of when your flow has been run. It can be very useful for a number of situations. But yeah, I'm really excited and love playing around with these new features in Tableau Prep, so hopefully you've enjoyed that too. Thanks for watching.